I am heavy weapons guy, and this is my weapon. She weighs 150 kilograms and fires $200 custom-tooled cartridges at 1,000 rounds per minute. It cost 4,000 glimmer to fire this weapon for 12 seconds. Oh my god, who touched Sasha? Who touched my gun? Some people think they can outsmart me. Maybe. Maybe. But I have yet to meet one who can outsmart Bullet. Back Guardians, another Dream Team video. I'm your humble host, Meesum777, and I've got a question for you. Why would you want to be accurate when you can be extra? If you're the type of person that likes to be loud and proud and can be heard from all the way downtown, if quantity over quality is your way to go, if more bullets equal more kills is your MO, well, I have got a weapon for you all. Let me introduce you to an old friend of mine, the Sweet Business. The Sweet Business is like a catfishing profile on Tinder, except for whatever reason it decided to lie about how beautiful it actually is. The Sweet Business claims to be a 360 round per minute auto rifle, but in reality it's really closer to something like 900 to 1,000. The main reason for this deception is its trait, Business Time. Sustained fire, boost range, and fire rate. And boy, when it says that it boosts fire rate, does it boost fire rate. This thing goes from being slow and generally something that you would never take into battle with a lower impact than most high impact auto rifles, to something that will absolutely melt through any Guardian's face who's dumb enough to poke you. And don't be fooled, there are plenty of Guardians who are dumb enough to challenge you. For whatever reason, people's brains turn off when they see the Sweet Business, and it's like that they decide, hey, you know what would be a good idea right now? For me to open up my mouth around this corner with the Sweet Business just firing 1,000 rounds per minute at around 200 damage to the face, and let me just sit right here and take all of it, right into the dome ski. I like to refer to this effect as the business effect. Once you get a monopoly going on the amount of ammunition that's being flown through the air, not a lot of people are able to challenge it, and for whatever reason they think that they're big enough in the britches to be able to handle it, when in fact they're not. A lot of the times Guardians will for whatever reason decide that they want to challenge this for really no good reason, and will just end up getting themselves torn into pieces, probably cut in half in the process as well, as the Sweet Business fires so freaking fast. I wouldn't be surprised if the thing is basically capable of cutting through buildings. Sweet Business is essentially Bungie saying, hey, I know you wanted to be an attack helicopter, but we can't put those in the game, so here's the next best thing. This thing is like a chopper gunner, except you have it constantly and all the time. We're combining that with a few other interesting traits and perks, as well as exotics that we're going to talk about here. But before we get into this very perfect and flawless in-depth review of this best PvP build that you could possibly get, allow me to plug myself a little bit here. We're a very small channel. If you want to help us grow and you want to see more videos like this, please do us a favor and subscribe. It does a lot for us and it really boosts our confidence. We really appreciate it. I love you so much! Anyway, back to business. Its intrinsic perk is Payday. Larger magazine, increased accuracy when firing from the hip. Picking up ammo for this weapon immediately reloads it. If I'm perfectly honest, this trait really doesn't have any effect into what we're doing. The larger magazine side is kinda obvious because it has 150 in the magazine. The stability and range and all this other stuff that it has to it really isn't important when you're able to fire so much lead that it's basically like walking into a wall. Sweet Business does in fact have a catalyst as well, but I couldn't be bothered to play PvE, so here it is. Essentially, whenever you get the catalyst fully activated, when this weapon becomes fully spin up, the flinch from incoming damage is greatly reduced. I don't know why this exists in the game, but it exists. It's not really useful, as essentially, like I said, there's so much lead flying at your opponent that the fact that they would be able to hit you at all is astonishing. But business isn't always booming. Sometimes you get Guardians who decide that they want to get into a place that you can't really business them down too fast. That's why we have our favorite weapon in the game right now, the Last Hope. 3-round burst sidearms are absolutely crazy right now. In fact, if you have a 3-round burst sidearm in your vault, I highly recommend you take it out and give it a swirl. These things are absolutely nutty when it comes to being able to dish out high bursts of damage at close range to Guardians consistently. This thing is capable of, I'm not joking, 2 bursting a Guardian at 491 rounds per minute. If that doesn't sound broken to you, I don't know what else I'm going to be able to sell you on in this video. If nothing else, try the freaking Last Hope, Last Dance, those 3-round burst sidearms. My flawless use of the English language hasn't convinced you enough, allow me to introduce you to another perk that exists in the game right now, Surprise Attack. While charged with light, reloading or readying a sidearm will consume all stacks of charge with light and convert them into stacks of major damage buff, which are depleted as you damage combatants with that sidearm. Essentially, once this perk is procced, you suddenly deal ridiculous amounts of damage with your sidearm after simply readying it up, i.e. swapping to it, or reloading it. This is a weird one as it applies this type of buff per dealing damage, not necessarily per getting kills, so it's possible that you could get multiple kills with this and still have the buff. One thing that is worth noting, of course, is the obvious minus 10 intellect that is slotted onto this thing. Essentially, if you've got a high intellect roll helmet that is void, this does require void, it probably is not going to be best for you to use this. I would recommend you use this more when you're using something that has a low intellect stat, as you will more than likely bottom it out rather than punish yourself for having it. I currently am not even running this right now, but I can only imagine the sheer amount of cheese that could come out of something like this. The amount of queso that would be flowing out of the end of my 3-burst sidearm could be unfathomable. And I almost feel sorry for my opponents once I finally get some armor that is in the new season and is also in void so that I can start taking advantage of it. But if you're like me or you're watching this a little bit later and you're looking for that armor and you happen to get it, by all means, give this a shot. Our exotic of choice is the Citan's Ramparts. It has the armor perk Assault Barricade. You and your allies can shoot through your towering barricade, which has reduced health and duration. Essentially what that allows you to do is it allows you to have essentially a one-way, semi-permeable membrane which bullets can pass through. The way to think about it is it's essentially like a mask for some virus that can't be named. What it allows you to do is it allows you to mask off anything that's trying to come in, but it allows the good stuff to come out. All of your glorious bullets are allowed to funnel through the end of this barricade, but anything that tries to come in the opposite direction gets blocked. It is worth noting that the barricade is significantly weaker than other barricades, so don't try to stay behind it if you're taking heavy amounts of fire, or somebody decides they want to waste every single round of Revoker into your barricade. What I would primarily recommend you doing with this is as a way to get your reload up or to catch a breather in between shots. And if I'm perfectly honest with you right now, I'll use the time that I have with the barricade up to actually roast some bacon on the end of the sweet business. The sweet business can get pretty hot and it's a waste to let all that beautiful thermal heat get wasted into the atmosphere. So I decided that, hell, I'll just go ahead and throw on some slabs of bacon on that thing and get myself toasty. The bacon has just as much salt as my opponents have for me using this loadout, so maybe that's not the best idea for your health if you're trying to watch your weight. For my subclass O choice, I'm running Top Tree Sentinel. That's right, good old Bubble Boy back at it again. I'm also running Suppressor Grenades because fuck you and fuck your super. And I'm also running the Strafe Lift because I honestly think it's the best thing in the game right now, outside of running something for Catapult Lift for the Middle Tree Striker. There's nothing too crazy to note here. The one thing that is nice is the defensive strike. It's your melee ability. Defeat an enemy with this melee ability to create an overshield around you and nearby allies. Final blows grant melee energy when this overshield is active. Realistically, you're never going to see the alternate benefits of this melee. The biggest thing that this is useful for is when you get into those close quarter engagements with an opponent, you happen to be at low health and finish them off the melee, you'll get the time that you'll need in order to pull back and get yourself reacquainted with what's going on around you. Occasionally, you'll give your teammates this overshield, but you're not playing a multiplayer game to play as a team. You're playing a multiplayer game to fire unholy amounts of lead into your opponent's face holes, so don't worry about it if you're not near opponents when you get that strike. If Sweet Business didn't kick enough ass, with Weapons of Light, the Sweet Business is capable of killing absolutely anything. Whereas before, Sweet Business was capable of killing a small house such as something that you and your family might have grown up in, now it's capable of taking care of an entire skyscraper. Bumping up its damage to around 25 per headshot, this thing will absolutely melt anything that comes through it. At around 1,000 rounds per minute, requiring only 8 headshots in order to kill absolutely any type of normal guardian it comes into, the Sweet Business plus Weapons of Light combo is absolutely devastating, and I would highly recommend giving it a try, just this alone if you haven't already. As for the rest of our perks, we're running anything that can essentially give us benefit to our auto rifle, being that's where we're going to be doing the most of our killing. Because of this current season, we have a lot of things that can actually indirectly benefit our auto rifles. We have things like enhanced scatter projectile targeting, we have unflinching rifle aim, and so on and so forth. I highly recommend running 2 auto rifle loaders on your gauntlets as, like I said, the Sweet Business takes a while to get itself going again, and getting yourself back into the fight is incredibly important. This is one of the few times that I actually would say that it's almost required that you run some type of reserves, in this case, auto rifle reserves, as the Sweet Business is very much one of those weapons that if you're using it properly, you might run out of ammo for, so making it a lot harder to do that would be highly recommended. Lastly, we run the Perpetuation mod on our mark. This has to be a void mark that you run it on, mind you, just so that you're aware. Perpetuation allows you to get your ability back a little bit faster, your class ability a little bit faster after using your class ability. We run 2 of them, and with that and a relatively high resilience stat, we're capable of getting back our barricade very frequently. That barricade can be important for make or break situations, so it's good to have it up as often as we can. In fact, this is one of the few times I would say resilience is not trash when it comes to making builds. Resilience in this case actually has a fair amount of benefit, as that barricade is pretty damn strong, allowing you and your team to get a fair amount of breathing room while still being able to maintain fire down range. If you're not sold on the barricade, I would recommend just generally running a high recovery stat then, as recovery is essentially our way of staying in the fight, which is what we're going for as a sort of tank build. Would not recommend running a whole lot of strength, as you're not going to be punching stuff too much. A high amount of discipline might be nice because it does give you the opportunity to get some breathing room, and intellect can be good because the Ward of Dawn, like mentioned, is absolutely crazy for swinging a gunfight. This is one of the few builds that has some pretty good synergy with our heavy weapon as well. I'm running a linear fusion rifle, in this case the Crooked Fang, but you can run whatever you want, as when it's charged with weapons of light, it's capable of one-shot bodying things. It's essentially like giving your Guardian the ability to do a Golden Gun's level of damage for simply just popping down your weapons of light on top of a heavy point. Now, on to some best tips and practices. The heavy build is one of those builds that requires a lot of patience and requires you to maintain an area very, very well. I would recommend that you find an area where you want to set up. I would recommend setting up somewhere in the center of the map where you can give your opponents the middle finger and taunt them into coming and daring to challenge you. Whenever you do have opponents in front of you, try to keep the weapon spun up as much as possible. The initial spin up takes some time. I would recommend doing it on a wall, just essentially just winding up a few shots and then stepping out before actually challenging. You will get your ass kicked if this weapon is not spun up and your opponents are paying attention. Another nice little tip is that the sweep business will maintain its high rate of fire if you try to tap fire it once it's spun up. Essentially, once you get it going to that point where it's starting to spin up and get red hot on the end of the barrel, just keep tap firing a little bit in order to keep that high charge state going. And don't be afraid to hip fire as you're coming around corners. Your opponents don't know any better whether you're hip firing or if you're ADSing, so they'll be probably scared in order to poke you. One of the hardest learning curves for this build is knowing that you have to swap to that sidearm even if the sweep business is already spun up and your opponents are in a close quarter space. The 3-burst sidearm is able to perfectly complement what you're trying to do with the sweep business. Once they get within that close quarter space, swap over to your sidearm as quickly as you can, which I said recommending running auto rifle things. Running an auto rifle, enhanced auto rifle dexterity in this case, can be pretty nice for getting it to it pretty fast. Don't be afraid to backpedal shotgunners that are rushing you down. You're fast, but you're not instant. If something's coming at you straight with something that can insta-kill you, you're gonna need a little bit of space to make it work. Not much space, but some space. I mentioned the barricades and I figured I should give them a little bit more attention here as they're a pretty integral part to the build. If you're getting ready to poke around a corner and you don't want to expose yourself too much before the sweep business gets spun up, or you want to give yourself a little bit of vision as to what might happen before you poke that corner, slap down a Citan's Ramparts barricade on the edge of the corner and then use the barricade's extension to walk around that corner. Don't be afraid to use a grenade as a sort of get off me tool as well. If you need to go ahead and throw down a reload and there's opponents still in front of you, you can throw out yourself a suppression grenade. If it hits them, great, they'll be kind of scared to push. If it doesn't hit them, they'll still have to respect the space that the thing demands. If you want to be a master strategist, I would recommend pulling out your ghost and taking a look at what your opponents have before popping down your bubble. You might be able to get an idea if your enemies are going to rush you with something that might be able to shut you down. For example, if you see that there is a Nova Bomb on the enemy team and you see this Warlock running straight at your bubble with zero shits given, I would recommend that you back away from your bubble because more than likely it's about to go down. Other than that, I recommend you give this build a try. It's a lot of fun, especially with the 600 RPM span that's happening right now, as well as the Antaeus Ward about to get a nerf. Be sure to subscribe to the channel as we're super small and we're, like I said, we really appreciate any type of subscription we get because it helps us grow from something teeny tiny into something really nice. It means a lot to us, and a positive rating means a lot to us as well. Thank you so much for joining me here. Bless your faces, and deuces.